Hey there, this is Yarrow, and welcome to Vested Capital, episode number 29, featuring my guest, Arthur Menard, the CEO and co-founder of Lambs. Vested Capital is a podcast about how people make money and put their capital to work. I interview startup founders, angel investors, venture capitalists, crypto and stock traders, real estate investors, and leaders in technology. So I don't know if you're aware of the company Lambs. It's a clothing company that initially started by providing men's underwear with a material in it that would protect the body from radiation, in particular cell phone radiation or wireless radiation. I actually came across this product. I'm not sure when. It was a couple of years ago, and I bought some of the underwear as a health-conscious person and someone who already put my phone onto airplane mode whenever I would wear it on my body. This was a product I understood, and it made sense to me. Fast forward to a couple of weeks ago, and we get a booking for my company, Inbox Done, to do a discovery call with the co-founder and CEO of Lambs. And I was like, oh, that's exciting. This is a company I know and a product I bought from. And I actually brought a pair of my underwear with me when we did the discovery call, over Zoom, just to show the founder that I have some of his underwear. So we had a bit of chuckle about that. But then I was surprised, as Arthur goes on to tell me during this discovery call, that he actually listened to this podcast, I don't know, something about 10 years ago. Obviously, it had a different name back then. It was the Entrepreneur's Journey podcast, but it was still me doing it. And it was one of the places where he got inspired to start his very first business, which you will hear about in this interview. He was in the online education space, helping students get better at studying. And he actually had an online course that he sells, and it still sells today. Incredibly, it's 100% automated business. So you'll hear about how he set that up and why he decided to get into the education space as his first business. You also hear about Arthur's next business, which was in the app space. So they created an app called One App. And when I say they, it's himself and his brother. And you'll hear about this. It's very French orientated, and Arthur is from Paris. That's where he was born. And it was basically an app that serviced the bakeries in France, providing, various social media related marketing support for bakeries and small businesses in France. You'll hear that story and how they grew that company, a lot of manual door-to-door knocking to get customers with that one, which then eventually led to today's main topic, which is Lambs, the company that Arthur is co-founder and still running. Over 8-figure business, thousands of customers around the world. They're not just doing men's underwear. There's women's underwear. There's shirts. There's, in Canada, they call it a torque, or in Australia, they call it a beanie. You put it on your head. So another way to protect yourself from radiation. And that's the idea. It's all health-conscious clothing to protect you from the elements, not just the weather elements, but the radiation coming from all of the technical devices we have around us all the time. I think you'll like this interview, especially if you're looking to create a physical product and basically invent something new, which is what Arthur had to do. He'll share the story of how he came up with the idea and how he manufactured the very first version of his product. So that will be interesting if you want to do something similar. So make sure you stay tuned for that. So before I press play on the conversation I had with Arthur, a reminder that this episode is brought to you by Inbox Done, the company that Arthur booked in for a discovery call that eventually led to this podcast being recorded in the first place. Inbox Done is a company that provides virtual executive assistants to take over your email, doing replies to your messages, organizing your email, managing your email, your calendar booking and scheduling. So all the conversations around bookings and meetings and gathering information and making sure the timing is right. Basic admin tasks. So if you have anything to do with customer service, data entry, any kind of software updates, communicating with the rest of your team, basically what you would expect an executive assistant to do, but is especially qualified with superior communication skills, which we find is necessary to handle something as personal and private as important as email, which is definitely the specialization of Inbox Done. So if you're drowning in email messages, if you want someone to take over managing your calendar, and you just need that right-hand person to kind of clone you, Inbox Done is the service for you. You can go to inboxdone.com, book a discovery call, tell us about your needs, what kind of business you're in, and then we can begin the process to match you with 2 of our assistants who you then work with them directly. They're dedicated to you and they become part of your team, and basically they go to work to simplify and make your life a whole lot easier and free you up, get you at least a couple of hours back each day. That's inboxdone.com. Okay, let's begin today's episode. Hello, Arthur. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yarrow, it's a pleasure to be here.
So a little bit of serendipity how this podcast came together. I did not expect to meet you through the way we met. Then I was also surprised to find out that we had a connection in the past. You had read my blog, and perhaps you were surprised to know that I had purchased some of your underwear from your company, Get Lambs, or Lambs as it's known, which for those who don't know, Lambs is a company that provides, well, at least when I bought my underwear, it was just underwear that protects you from the Wi-Fi signals, the phone signals, all the radiation going around. I remember when I was looking at I think it was a Facebook ad I must have seen for your company at the time, maybe Instagram. I'm not sure where I came across it, but you're probably everywhere. And this is a few years ago. And I remember going, this makes a lot of sense. Creating clothing that blocks what our laptops and our phones and our computers are emitting appealed to me. I've always been one of those people that was, I didn't like to put my phone on my back pocket 100% of the time. Like I put it on airplane mode whenever I'm putting it near my body, that sort of daily habit. So I'd love to hear the story of how you came up with this idea and how do you even build underwear that blocks radiation like that. You are the co-founder and CEO of Lambs, so we can talk about that. Would love to dive into your background as well, but just for a kind of a summary of where Lambs is at today, do you want to talk a little bit about how successful the company is?
Yeah, sure. So Lambs is actually the first kind of company of its kind of the world, which is health enhancing apparel. So we've designed Lambs and all of its products with one thing in mind, which is how can we help our customers on their health and wellness journey to be healthier without having to change their habits. So we started off with wireless radiation, then added a few things. Our t-shirts are UPF 50, which means that they block 98% of UV rays as well. So really trying to remove as many external stresses as possible from the body. It's an 8-figure company. We have tens of thousands of clients here in the US, but also all around the world. I don't know if you were in Canada when you bought or still in Australia.
I was probably in Australia, when I bought them.
Or roaming around Europe.
Maybe Canada. Who knows? I was somewhere around the world. Yeah.
And it's growing really, really fast, which is awesome. And it's a pretty amazing journey. And just to go back to your intro of serendipity, I was listening to this very podcast almost 10 years ago when I had my first job, actually. So I was driving an hour every day to get to work, an hour to get back, and just listening to the amazing stories of people on your podcast. So it's pretty awesome for me to be able to share mine here.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to share your story, and I love hearing from a long-term listener. 10 years ago is a long time ago. I feel like there's a bit of a French internet marketing kind of mafia almost. I don't know if you're part of it, but I know I have a friend, Alexis Santine. He was a person who came from France to Australia. I met him, and then through him, there's another person on my show called Aurélien Amaker who created System.io. He was a guest on the show. And then Olivier Roland was an internet marketer I connected with many, many years ago. I had him on the show as well. And I felt like every time I spoke to a French person who was doing something online, they all knew each other. So I don't know what, if you when you left France, but is that kind of true? Is there sort of a strong community of entrepreneurs, online entrepreneurs in France?
Yeah. So I met Olivier as well as Sébastien, which is another one of these famous marketers in France a few years ago before leaving France. I think they did a great job at creating a very strong community and helping each other out. And yeah, I think they did a great job at trying to educate the market a little bit like you did, like in 2000, when did you start? 2005, something like this. They were, obviously France is a little behind in everything. And so it's, I think, around 2008, 2009 is when these guys got started and started to try and help the online community launching their own courses and products. Yeah, they have definitely very strong ties together.
And were you exposed to any of that back then, or was there any connection to it? Or?
A little bit. I mean, I followed their material early on, but then I quickly moved to actually the original source. So more like the English-speaking
American
marketers. The Americans. Well, mostly you, to be honest, consumed a lot of your materials. But yeah, who else was I following back then? Pat Flynn was a big influence as well. And yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's continue this dive into your history. So born and raised in France, I'm assuming?
Born and raised in Paris.
Paris, okay. Parents, any entrepreneurial influence there from your parents, or?
So it's more when I grew up. Apparently, according to my parents, when every kid is going to tell you that they want to be a policeman or a firefighter or an astronaut or something like this, all I had was ideas for businesses. Most of them were probably not great, but growing up, I knew that I wanted to build something. And this idea of innovation and building something from the ground up was very ingrained in as I was growing up. My grandfather was an entrepreneur, and that might have come from him. But both my parents never studied any company, but were very enthusiastic at the idea of me trying to build something and to not necessarily follow the footsteps of the traditional way. So they were very supportive from an early age.
Does that mean you had some kind of business as a teenager, or were you planning on studying business first?
No, I definitely did a bunch of things when I was a kid. What did I do? I was building websites. I had a whole little ad thing running that was funding my whatever I needed to purchase when I was a kid. So probably started this when I was 10 to 12, and throughout like middle school and high school, I was running ads on a bunch of websites that I had designed and built. Definitely nothing that I'm proud of today in terms of what was out there. It was mostly about, I can't remember what, like video games and a bunch of different things. And that was kind of my first dabble into building stuff. Back then, not really built for money, to be perfectly transparent. Like it was mostly more like if I was passionate about something, I'd build a website and a community around it and then put ads and on top of it. And that's but never try to optimize or really make money of any sort with this, aside from the pocket money that I was making. So I got a late start in the real business world.
So in terms of your kind of studies then, if you were obviously aware of the internet, you knew how to build websites. So that already is a skill set that gives you an advantage. What was the path for you? Did you go to university and study something related to business, or did you do something, go straight into the workforce, or what was the path?
Yeah, no, I definitely studied. So I've kind of always followed my passions in life, to be honest. And I was super interested in two things. Number one, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I knew I wanted a business component to what I was studying. And two, I've always been fascinated with human health. So very early on, aside from building businesses or innovation, what have you, the other thing that I was super interested in was how can we optimize health? And pretty early on, I've been exposed to people developing cancers and friends of family dying from secondhand smoking. And that really had an impact on me on realizing that what the choices that I was making today had an impact on my likelihood to be sick tomorrow. And I started educating myself in this space. And so I ended up doing two master's degrees, one master's degree in engineering and biology with a specific focus on human health and biotechnologies. And then completed this with an MBA shortly after to go a little bit deeper in the business, on the business side. How much of your MBA do you use in real world? Not not a lot, but definitely opened up a lot of doors and made great friends and great connections there. And a few of my buddies went on to create amazing companies, which I'm really looking up to. So that was probably the best part.
Oh, great. So you finish an MBA. What do you do next? Like, is that a case of, I'm going to be an academic, I'll just, try and get work in a university, or I'll go do research? Like, what were you thinking at the time?
I honestly did it mostly because I knew it would really help in my entrepreneurial journey afterwards. So this MBA was actually, I majored in entrepreneurship, which is a weird major per se, but the way the program was designed was really designed in a way that would kind of help us build our first company whilst at school, which is what I did, except that it was my second company. So I started my first real business when I was 20 during my first master's degree, and then my second one whilst I was at school during my MBA. So I kind of have a habit of starting school and starting a business at the same time.
Okay. How did those two businesses go, and what were they?
So the very first one, I'll go a little bit back in time for this one. I started when I was a kid, looking into personal development. Pretty fascinated about this whole world of bettering myself and trying to be on a journey of just improvement, and stumble upon one book, which you're probably very familiar with, which is The 4 Hours Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And this book had a massive impact on me when I was 18, 19 at the time, in how I looked at the world. And that's what propelled me to actually start my very first business. And I remember reading this book, like, okay, well, what should you launch if you're looking for a business idea? And I'm like, I was 19 years old back then, or 20, and I had no experience in life except like the traditional stuff. But for one thing, which is in France, if you want to get into the AV schools, you have to do the equivalent of the SATs in the US after 2 years of very intense studies. And it's a competitive exam, and based on your ranking, you get into the best schools. So it's 2 years of your life that you're studying, where you're studying super hardcore, and you have this one exam that kind of determines the rest of your life from an academic perspective. So lots of pressure. And back then, so I had just completed that, ranked very well, fortunately, and I was tutoring kids for specifically math and biology. And I realized that all of my time that I was spending tutoring those kids was spent mostly teaching them about how to work rather than how to math or to do math or anything like this. And that kind of got me going on, well, I should probably create a course that teaches students how to work more efficiently, which was the most important part. It's not about, you have so much to learn and to do that if you're not organizing yourself properly, you're setting yourself up for failure and for burnouts, etc. So created this first course, started selling it, and then realized quickly that it was not built the right way. Trashed everything, followed your blueprint back then, kind of rebuilt everything from the ground up. And spent the next 2 or 3 years really just exploring with this. So that's how I learned online ads. That's how I learned how to write copy properly, automation systems. So I had a whole Aweber that probably used your affiliate link to get this started. I had a whole Aweber sequence with upsells, with all of this. So it was an amazing first experience to learn about online marketing. A lot has changed since then, but and up to this day, the business is still going. It's fully automated, not touching anything. Yeah, so that was my first experience with online marketing, and that was kind of the only thing I knew back then was, okay, well, I've studied hard for 2 years, and I can teach other kids how to do this. And I think with this, I helped somewhere around 10,000 students. I don't have the latest numbers because, as I said, I haven't touched that in a couple of years. But that was a great first venture into this world.
Yeah, it sounds so good. Why did you stop, or you didn't stop it? You let it go in automatic mode, but did you just want to try something different? So you just let that run itself and start something new?
So I always wanted to do something a little bigger as well. So the biggest limitation for this was the market size, which is there are 40 or 80,000 students that go this route every year, which is quite a lot of students, but at the same time, that's kind of the market limitation. And it's a tough business in the sense that you spend a lot of time trying to acquire your customer, which is in your pool for 2 to 3 years, and then they're gone and they're starting their life at university, and you don't have anything else to sell them. So you have a very short period of time where your customers are actually potential, where your prospects are actual prospects, and then they're gone forever. And even your customers, once you acquire them, I didn't have any upsell afterwards. Like once you're in university, once you're in. So that was really the biggest limitation of the business when it came to growth. And then there is the reality behind it, which is after a few years, I was not really passionate about this anymore. Mostly, like, this was another part of my life that, I was not a student anymore. Like, I was not a student of this specific, it's called prépa. I was not a prépa student anymore, and I had not been for a few years. And so at some stage, it just became something that I'm not sure I could really build the best products out there anymore because I wasn't part of this world for quite a while.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. It's a common story. I think I've had the same idea where I'm like, I want to do something bigger. I'm no longer interested in this industry. But you were still studying when you started your second one. So what was the idea for that one?
So the second one was a B2B company. So I realized I can't really remember the full like aha moment for this one, but I think it was actually a marketing class where we were starting to look at social media specifically, and how big companies are using social media to create a stronger connection with their clients and just awareness with them at all times. In France, you have a bunch of small businesses, especially in the food and beverage industry. So you have a lot of bakeries, specifically. You have a lot of meat shops. You have a lot of flower shops, etc. So lots of small businesses that are struggling to face the big, the Walmarts of the world in France. And back then, I started going and chatting with those guys and realized that they had all of them had heard about social media. All of them were super interested in communicating with their clients there, letting them know about the behind the scenes of how do you make a baguette, of the products coming for holidays, et cetera, Yet none of them knew how to use it. Or if they did, they definitely didn't have time because they are already so busy running the whole shop and making the products and everything that goes with it. And so the second company that I built was aimed at solving this. We were trying to help small businesses to gain visibility with social media without having to put in as much work and making it super simple for them. So we built a whole app for this market so that they could use it very, very simply and be through a guided journey, be able to spend 10 minutes and plan out the next couple of weeks in terms of posts with the kind of posts that they needed to create explained and the whole thing super guided. So I built this with my brother, and our main beta tester was our grandmother. Essentially, we're like, okay, she doesn't know anything about how to use a phone, how to use the internet. And we're going and we're having her try the app and kind of tweaked it till she could actually use it. And she was like, okay, I understand. That's easy. And then we're like, all right, we got it nailed down. And then our first customers were bakeries. We started going door to doors to bakeries, trying to sell them the software. We built this on a SaaS model, which has always been my favorite models of all times, where you acquire a customer once, and hopefully, if you do your job well, they stay forever. And I believe that our very first customer is still with us today, which is kind of cool.
Wow. So what's the name of this business?
This is One App.
One App. Okay, so that's I'm looking at your profile on LinkedIn. That's the other, besides Lambs, obviously your current business. One App is still your present company. You're like a board member. So, and Method Prepa, I see you are still listed there as a founder too. So it sounds like you build a business. You don't shut it down or sell it. You let one continue to run automatically. What happened with One App? Did it grow to the point where you could retire young and rich? Like, how did that go?
I don't think I'm ever going to retire. This is my idea of retirement is to do what I love to do. And if that's what it is, then I've been retired my whole life, in a sense.
It's a good way of putting it. I agree, Arthur. But how did One App go? It's obviously still going now 7 years later. So what's the growth story there?
Yeah, so it went very well, actually. I was building this on the side during my MBA, and I think we grew the team to close to 10 people very, very quickly. And we grew to a point where what it became was, okay, well, we either need to go after other markets internationally, or we need to figure out like a different path for the company to get past the ceiling of just the nature of the market.
Is that because you ran out of bakeries, or you just ran out of every type of business, small business in France? Because there's a lot of businesses in France. I would have thought you'd have a never-ending stream there.
No, for sure. We were focusing on bigger cities mostly, and just due to the nature that the business limitation was that with this type of businesses, it's a lot of personal relationship that you need to develop. So they're very happy to use your product, but they want to meet you in person first. They want you to go and train them and explain them how it works. And so the limitation that we grew into was, okay, well, we can only do, if that's how it's going to work, we can't do cities that are like 3, 4, 5 hours away. And we need to make sure that in one given day, when we're going out to meet these people, our prospect, our clients, that we're able to optimize the day. So that kind of limited very quickly where we could go and how we could grow there. And so the business still grew to do, we were doing 6 figures essentially. But based off this, that was kind of the limitation as to how big we could grow it.
And you didn't want to like get a sales team to kind of go door to door and just pay them on commission or something like that? Ooh, hello.
This is Odin. So this is what we grew originally. But again, like the challenge was we could only have a sales team in areas where it made sense to have, where we had enough bakeries, enough clients to really make it work. Otherwise, the commission would be, I mean, just from a economics perspective, you still need to pay people minimum wages in France, even if they're a sales team. And just based off minimum wages plus commission, etc., it only made sense in big cities, and this is what we did. So we built it to this point, and now we're thinking, okay, well, we've kind of saturated the big cities in France. Do we go to other countries? Like, how do we run this? And at this stage, I'm also at a point where I want something that, like, the idea that I had for my career was I wanted to launch a business where I could impact millions of people. And so the B2B SaaS was awesome from a business perspective and from an experience perspective. But I was like, I would love to go and do something that really, where I can really impact a lot more people. And this is the discussion that I had then with my brother, which was like, okay, well, this is awesome what we built, but I don't want to continue on building this abroad because honestly, I just want a change of scenery. So he took the reins of the business, and he's a little bit younger than I am, so he was pretty happy not to have me in his hair to grow this, and that worked out pretty well. And so he took the reins. I stayed on just to help out with the strategy, and I went on to create Lambs. That was the moment where I was like, okay, well, for the next one, I want something, kind of learn from the two businesses. And I was like, okay, I want something where I've got a huge market size, and I want something where I'm really passionate about what I'm building, so that in a few years from now, I don't have this feeling of like, well, I'm not a student anymore, therefore, like, I'm not connected to my market. And so that's how I knew that Lambs was the right fit when I started it, because I was like, okay, I can be in there for 10 years. That's fine. Like 20 years, it's all good.
No pun intended there with the right fit. Interesting evolution you've got. So you were an education marketer, and I can see why connecting with my work and Pat Flynn would lead you down that kind of path. Then an app, which is a little more tricky because it's software, and then you're doing like door-to-door sales, which is different from selling a digital information product, with email marketing and so on. And then now you say, I'm going to do something completely different, physical. I mean, not completely different because it is online, but you are selling a physical item. How do you begin that kind of business? Like, did you have any understanding of like, how do you manufacture underwear? Plus the added aspect of this, and I'd love to know too, how you even came up with the technology for that Lambs idea in the first place.
Yeah, so I can walk you through how the idea came about first. So again, aside from entrepreneurship, one of my big thing was health optimization. So I was reading countless books on the topic. I studied human biology, et cetera, et cetera. So one thing that I realized one day, as we're having dinner with friends, and all of us take their cell phones out of our pockets, and we all put it on the table face down. And that prompted a discussion, which was, okay, well, we've all heard about the fact that we probably shouldn't put our cell phones in our pockets next to our reproductive organs, and yet we're all doing this on a daily basis. And so this was the moment where I was like, that's interesting. So we're I'm pretty health conscious. Most of my friends are. We're watching what we're eating. We're watching what we're putting inside our bodies, but we're not really watching what we're exposing our bodies to. And what kind of external stressors is there out there and how bad are they? And so looked into wireless radiation specifically, realized that it's a class 2B human carcinogen, which is the same as car exhaust fumes, according to the World Health Organization. And that was the haha moment where I was like, okay, if there was a car running in my bedroom or my living room at all times, I would probably not be staying there. And this is effectively what I'm doing with wireless radiation, except that I can't smell it in this specific case. But it is impacting my body. And so that's what prompted me to start looking into, can we create something that solves this problem and that helps us essentially monitor what we're exposing our bodies to? Looked into solutions that's already existed, and it turns out that NASA spacesuits have a built-in radiation-proof technology because astronauts in space are exposed to a ton of cosmic radiations. One of my good friend is an incredible engineer. He's got a ton of patents under his belt, and he really has this beautiful mind of creating solutions whenever problems exist. So we sat down, we went through his creative process of how can we use the same principle, the same technology, but adapt it for garments. And are garments even the best thing? It turns out that it is. And how can we adapt it? So spent quite a bit of time. Back then he was completing his PhD. We had access to a lab, and just got started with iterations of fabric to try and create something that would actually block wireless radiation. I didn't know anything about creating a physical product. Our very first product was terrible, absolutely terrible. But what I did know was how to sell something on the internet. And so he was focused on building the product, and he's not part of the company. He has a share of the company. He's someone who doesn't want to operate a business, so he loves to create technologies, etc. But he's definitely an inventor for sure. So he owns equity in the company for creating the technology. But as he's iterating on versions of the product, I'm trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to sell the thing online, and how can I get this off the ground with A, testing the market, and B, spending. How do I optimize my spending essentially? So back then, Kickstarter had been a thing for a few years now. So looked into equity crowdfunding, spent about 6 months to create our first campaign, and that's how we got started. We just did we did a campaign with zero marketing budget, essentially letting our friends and family know. And from there, word of mouth grew, and it grew enough for us to start our first batch of product manufactured in a proper factory. And as I said, pretty terrible product at the beginning because we didn't know anything about how to make garments. But got us going, and we gathered feedback, and we grew the business essentially with this initial input of money, which was our first crowdfunding. And it was pretty small, like it was $25,000, something like this. But that was enough to get us going, to get a first production batch, start selling the product, get more money in the bank, and kind of get the ball rolling like this. That was men's underwear, so I was kind of scratching my own itch in a sense. And so that's how we got. That's how we funded the company. And then fast forward a few months later, there's an event here in the US called CES, the Consumer Electronics Show. It's a massive event where companies go and present their latest inventions and innovations in the technology world for consumers. And so back then, our only product is underwear. We reach out to the CES. They have a special startup program where you can go there for, I think it's like $1,000 for a booth. It's nothing, but they have to select you. They love the idea, and they got us a booth in their startup pavilion. And we went there and we're like, okay, we're literally spending all of our money going to Las Vegas to this consumer electronics show. Back then, we're based out of France. There are flights. There are all the costs associated with the conference, hotels, etc. We're literally spending our entire budget on this, but we're like, this is the one place where, if anything, we should pick up a lot of traction, and we will have people become aware of what we're doing. So it's our one shot, and we don't want to miss it. So we brainstorm on how can we get maximum exposure. And the way we did it was we went there, we had T-shirts on, which explained what we were doing, and no pants. So we walked around this conference, essentially in our underwear. Got a ton of attention. It was pretty awesome. So we had like a ton of journalists. I remember this journalist, I think she was from ABC News or something. She's on her way to some interview. She sees us. She turns around with her camera crew. She's like, nope, we're going this way. So kind of paid off to play on this, because we ended up being the number one startup in terms of exposure that year. They had like the CES had this tool that was monitoring the internet for keywords, and the name of the company just kept popping up everywhere.
I have a question, actually, Arthur. I have two questions, but I got to ask one now. Lambs, where did the name come from in the first place?
Yeah, originally we started the company with a different name. And the number one question that we were getting from our customers, given the fact that it is health-enhancing apparel that is protective, and it's made out of silver fibers. I'm not sure if you can see properly on the camera. But the very first question that we were getting was, is that comfortable? Or is it going to be like a chainmail type of garment? Because, and we took a lot of time trying to figure out like how to create something that'd be as comfortable, if not more comfortable, than a traditional garment. And so we decided to rename the company with a name that would really feel that would really scream comfort. And so lambs, there was this idea of like a coat of wool of a lamb that is very protective but soft and comfy.
Okay, what was the first name of the company, the original name?
The first name was Spartan. So
Spartan?
Spartan.
Spartan. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So when kind of the other way, completely in terms of naming, and also lambs was. I mean, the idea for the company was obviously to go broader, and Spartan originally was to kind of appeal to manliness, which doesn't really work for women, and we do have a women line today. Yeah,
makes sense. Okay, all right, so back to the CES story. You're the number one startup in terms of exposure at this event, but what does that actually mean for a business? Because it sounds like you spent your 25 grand Kickstarter money, which was meant to, I assume, go to manufacture the first batch to then send to all those backers as well. So does that CES exposure lead to more investors or retailers buying your product, or like how does it play out?
Yeah, so we had already manufactured the product. We had already sent the products to our backers. Back then, we also had some seed money that we had put into the company ourselves, and so that's actually what we spent mostly. So we had products, we had inventory, we had already delivered on our Kickstarter. So what it did is, one, sales. So we sold out of all of our current inventory, which was great, and got some cash flow in the company. And two, as you said, that allowed us to go out to investors now with something more. So when creating something with our end goal is to become the number one clothing brand in the world for health conscious people. So definitely a very big vision. And so we realized quickly that we're going to need help, and we're going to need external investors if we want to grow the business. The challenge you have when you're a kid, I had built a couple of businesses, but on this one, essentially we had, aside from the product and this first campaign, we didn't have anything to really show to investors. And this was really helpful in the sense that, yes, this is interesting, like this is picking up interest in the world, but also, and mostly, it's like we can get stuff done. Like, you can trust us as a team, and back then it's me and my co-founder, so we're two people, but it's like, yeah, we'll get in underwear, we've got brain juice, and we can show you what we did so far. And that was very helpful in convincing people that we were the right team to take this forward and to grow this. And that's how we were able to convince our first investors.
Okay, so two questions on that. How did you meet your co-founder, and like what are the skill sets? Because this is not a software startup, so to speak. It's a DTC, direct to consumer product. I understand the need for the inventor, but like you said, he didn't continue on as an active founder. I know your skill, Arthur. You're the marketing guy, so I get what you bring to the table. You would have been, ready to put out all the ads and do the SEO and whatever you can to growth hack this company. What was your co-founder needed for?
Yeah, operations mostly, and someone who I was essentially looking for someone who had a very different personality from me. So I'm very creative. I can come up with different strategies. I can build a vision for the future. And I need someone who is very, very regular, very talented at taking something and operating, essentially. And I met my co-founders through online ads. So
Really?
I put out an ad for someone, and it was interesting because I essentially wanted to recruit someone. Back then, I have a lot of friends that would fit the bill, but they were all working on something at the time. The natural thing that came from me was like, okay, well, I'm going to recruit someone. Probably the most unappealing ad, which essentially I said, well, you need to invest money to get into the business, because I wanted someone who was serious about it, not, like, oh, that sounds interesting. So my co-founder, Thomas, was the last applicant out of probably I had 200 people who replied to this ad.
Where did you put the ad? Just like as a job on LinkedIn or?
Traditional job posting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
essentially. Something like Indeed. Yeah, had about 200 applicants. Thomas was the very last one to apply, because after 200, I was like, I need to shut this off. Like, got the first phone call with him as I'm riding a bicycle to go meet one of the applicants, actually. And during this phone call, I'm like, there's something about this guy. Like, he seems to be super smart. And so I built a process to kind of go through skill sets. I'm a big fan of having people do something instead of just interviewing them. And Thomas's case study was really stellar. What was interesting as well is, again, like I said, I was asking him to invest money to buy equity into the business, so that I knew he would be serious about it. He had just had his first kid back then as well. And there is this guy who just had his first kid who's like, I'm going to quit my job, I'm going to invest money, and I'm going to get this off the ground with you, who's super smart, who just did a stellar case study. And we're super well paired, and we've been working great together since then.
And he has to look good in underwear if you're going to walk around the trade show floors wearing underwear, right? So
he looks great.
So then you decide to raise some funding, and I can totally understand why. It's a physical product. You have to do that dance where you sell a bunch, you get some cash, but you have to use that cash to manufacture the next, and so on. So how do you raise money for this, and what kind of valuation, and what are you looking for during that first raise? Because I'm assuming that was also the first time you ever raised money for your own startup at this level.
I mean, raising money is tough. First off, so it's a massive dance with investors. It's a very interesting exercise, because it's all about social proof. Essentially, the first investors that you meet, they're potentially interested, but they want to see, like, okay, do you have other investors? And you're like, oh, I'm talking with a bunch of interested people. It's like, okay, let me know when. What's the update? Like, has anyone invested yet? So it's a very interesting exercise where you learn to essentially you need to find this first person who's going to make the decision, and so what happened is, shortly after the CES, we actually had a first investor who contacted us. It's from my school. I've got someone who reaches out, and he's like, hey, my father, he's the CEO of this big fabric company, and he'd love to talk to you because he thinks that's super interesting. We meet with that person. He wants to invest back then $200,000 or $300,000 into the business. But he has one specific requirement, which is I want to be the sole investor in the business. I don't want any co-investors, and that's it. And back then, when you're just getting started, like, getting an infusion of cash of $300,000 sounds like, wow, this is absolutely awesome. And I'm chatting with the partner of a VC fund who essentially she's super bright as well. I really admire her. And she essentially walked me through the numbers, and she was like, if you're taking this money right now as a sole investor, there is no way that you're going to be able to grow the company to a point where either you don't need any money anymore or you can raise more capital, because this is just not enough to get you to your next stage. Kind of walk me through this. I realized that with her, thanks to her, went back to that guy, started talking about, well, actually, like, here's how much it's going to take, like, here's the updated business model. And if you want to be the sole investor, that's fine, but then you need to put in twice as much, or we're going to need other investors. He went on to try and find a copycat of us, which was pretty funny. We have patents. We have patent protection on our technology, but that never stopped anyone. And so we had a copycat that started a few months later that he funded. That was the very first guy that we discussed with. So the copycat today is dead. So at least, I mean, on this end, that didn't really work out for him. But we went on to find amazing investors, looking mostly for smart money at the beginning. I mean, actually, we've always done that. And trying to find people in the space. So our investors were all coming either from the health and wellness world or from the apparel world. And this was really instrumental for us. So later on, we today have the former president of Lululemon, who's an investor and advisor to the company. And we have quite a few people who are in the apparel space as well. And that really helped us build a product that was much better than the original one, where we're like, well, we don't know what we're doing. So we knew how to sell products online. We knew how to create this technology, but we didn't know anything about making garments, about logistics, about all of this. So yeah, we did this dance. We convinced the first person to write us. Our first check was $7,500, but at least it got the ball rolling, and then we got a $10,000 check, and then we got a $20,000 check, and slowly but surely we were able to put together a round and raise our first round of equity, which was close to $1 million, and which got topped off by a little bit of government money as well. We got a grant for $400K.
So how have you managed to grow to the point you are today? Like, what's worked well for you?
Well, first off, word of mouth. So for us, that's always been the biggest channel. We really focused early on trying to figure out if we had product market fit, which is, do people repurchase our products? And especially with something like lambs, it's the decision that you're making, which is, okay, well, I care about my health and I care about this, and I want to take this step of like, wearing health enhancing apparel, wearing something that protects me from ice radiation, from UV, etc. When you're making that choice, in theory, you should be making that choice for every day of the week, not like, oh, I'm going to buy one and that's it. So very interesting aspect for us was like monitoring, okay, are people repurchasing the product? And so we spent a lot of time at the beginning working on the product to make it good enough that people would want to actually switch out to lamps fully. And then the second piece is we're touching something that is a very important value for people, health. And so as much as I don't really share which socks I'm wearing, because I don't really care enough, like something that I do for my health, I'm going to share with the people that are important and close to me. And so that's something that we really tried early on to make work for us, which was, okay, are people going to be telling their friends and family about lamps? So that was the very first one, was, okay, let's make sure that we have a product that people want to talk about. And then the second piece was online ads, which is probably how you found us. And this was a skill set that I learned to develop back in my Meta Prepa days, which today is such a different landscape from what it was a few years ago, where you could go and you had profitable ads super easily and whatnot. For us, it was not like this at the beginning, so we had to kind of learn how this had evolved in recent years. And I would say the biggest difference is very early on, our first employee is someone that I actually met whilst traveling the world. I did a 1-year stint where I went around the world before starting Lamps, actually. Met this guy who is the smartest engineer I've ever met, and who joined the company as our very first employee. And what was instrumental for us is having someone technical on board from the get-go, so that we could iterate very quickly on our website and get precise data. So compared to any starting business, We had a ton more data, and we had the ability to go and iterate without, spending tens of thousands of dollars on a freelancer for every website edit. And we were focused on one thing when looking at online ads, was like, okay, the end of the funnel is going to be our website. So how do we make sure that the website is as clear as possible and converts? And so we went on to increase our conversion rate threefold before we actually really spent money on online ads. And we did this via A/B testing all the time, sending minimal traffic, but monitoring everything, doing a lot of focus groups with people on like, is this clear? Do you understand what we're doing? Et cetera, et cetera. And through this, we were able to first fine tune the end of the funnel and then finally send people over to the website once we knew that we had something that was crystal clear, that was converting, et cetera, et cetera. And to this date, we keep on iterating. Just launched a new version of the website recently, which is performing even better than the old one. This is something that is very ingrained into what we're doing, which is constant experiments. But yeah, if I had to point it down to one, like our success to one factor was like very, very early on focusing on these important metrics, which was, okay, are people getting what we're doing?
Wow. Yeah, that's very smart for such an early phase. Normally people do that later on, I think, to really start at the beginning. If people want to see the website, obviously getlambs.com, they could go see your most recent version, like you just said, the new version. I know we got to kind of start wrapping it up. My fault, I have to run this time. Arthur, what is a day in the life like for you now? Because I know obviously you were the co-founder with just your one co-founder. You were the one at the event. You were the one wearing the product. You were the one probably writing the copy, running the ads. Now it's like you said, an 8-figure business. You've got thousands of customers. I'm guessing you don't do the same roles as you did back then. So what's a day in the life for you with the business?
Yeah, it is very different from what I was doing back then. We now have a team, which are taking care of various aspects of the company. I spent most of my time doing 3 things. One, working with my team, making sure that we're working on the right stuff, that it's going in the right direction. And they're amazing, and the company would not be anywhere close to where we're at today without their hard work. So, just making sure that they stay motivated, that this is going the right way. So management and leadership, if you will. 2 is I spend a lot of time exchanging with our customers, actually, via email or trying to get on the phone with them as often as I can. But we're an online business, and contrary to retail, where you have someone or service where you're directly working with your clients, in our case, we don't see them unless we actively try to reach out to them, which is what we do. And that allows me to better understand our audience, etc. And that goes on to the third part, which is the strategy. So constantly working on where are we going, how can we get there more efficiently, speaking with other CEOs in the space, and really building this network, speaking with our investors, speaking with as many people as I can to better understand our space, better understand our clients, and keep on building the vision for next month, next quarter, next year, next 5 years, etc. Yeah, it's amazing. It's a super. One thing that was fascinating in this journey was the moment where you transition from running your own business, where it's you, to actually having employees and people who, entire families, that the business is able to support. And that's a moment where you're like, wow, we've built something that is real, and that doesn't need necessarily me anymore either, which is a pretty insane feeling.
Like having a child and then watching them grow up.
Right? Essentially, yeah.
And then watching them have children and all that sort of thing. So,
yeah, I'm a lot of my friends today have built companies where they don't know all the employees anymore. I'm not at that phase yet where we don't know each other, but this is I like the child analogy for sure.
And you're in San Francisco right now.
We're in Santa Monica, so Los Angeles. Yeah, there's a huge health and wellness scene here in LA, and a big e-commerce community as well. So it makes a lot more sense than San Francisco, which is very software focused.
Yes. Okay. Of course. All right. Arthur, thank you for the story. I feel like I'd love to dive into your ad strategies, and I'd love to dive into all the steps in the investing as well a bit more. So there's so many layers to all this success. Maybe we can come back and do like a round 2 when you get to the next stage in 12 months or something like that.
I would be honored to.
Okay, let's put it in the calendar. Website. So obviously getlambs.com for buying the product. I know when I shopped, it was underwear for men. I remember seeing beanies or torques, as they call them here in Canada, for your head pop up. Women's underwear. You're wearing a t-shirt, so there's clothing, apparel. You said this is going to be for healthwear for anyone who's health conscious, or clothing for anyone who's health conscious. I'm assuming socks, underwear, shorts, pants, yoga gear, activewear, everything and anything will eventually be available on Get Lambs. Is that about right?
Yeah, we have a lot of products in development. It takes a lot of time to develop products because, again, like we're really focused on making products that are truly exceptional and that people want to share. But we have a bunch of products in development. So if you don't find what you're looking for, feel free to sign up to our mailing list, and you'll probably get it at some stage. And otherwise, shoot me an email at art@getlambs.com. That's how I exchange with all of our customers. So feel free to just shoot me a note. And yeah, I'll be happy to hear from you.
art@getlambs.com. Fantastic. Or getlambs.com and look up the contact info. Arthur, thank you for taking the time, and keep up the great work. I'd love to see Lambs one day, maybe IPO. That would be a fun thing to see. So yeah, go for it.
Thanks, Yaro. Amazing being on the show. Really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for listening.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Arthur Menard. I feel like there's going to be a part 2 very soon. Do not be surprised if you see on the feed of Vested Capital a second interview with Arthur. I felt like I was a little rushed for time. I didn't get to ask a few of the questions I wanted to. 100% my fault. I had another engagement I had to run off to, so I would have loved to have done another extra half an hour. So I'm going to ask Arthur to do a part 2, and we can dive into a few things around Lambs that I didn't get to ask. And also he's got some investment strategies that I'd love to talk about too. As a fellow angel investor, I never got a chance to ask him about that. So hopefully we'll have him on a part 2, but you certainly got a great overview of his life in this part 1. I hope you enjoyed that. And especially if you're someone who has an idea for perhaps a new type of product that's not been done before, I think just hearing the insight into how Arthur connected with an inventor, how they got the product made, like the first prototype, and then of course the fun story of how they went to the convention CES in Vegas and promoted by wearing the underwear, walking around the convention, which led to a lot of exposure, a lot of new customers. That was a lot of fun to hear as well. If you have a family member or a friend who would benefit from hearing this story from Arthur, perhaps they're looking to create or invent a new product and build a business around it, send them to Vested Capital episode 29 to hear Arthur's story. It will possibly lead to a breakthrough, maybe an insight, or at the very least inspire them to get started with their business. And you too should subscribe to Vested Capital using whichever podcast playing app you currently use, whether it's Apple or Google or Spotify or Amazon or Audible. All of those devices, all of those apps have the ability to subscribe to a podcast. They'll have a plus button or a follow button or a subscribe button. If you click that while you're listening to Vested Capital, you will get a notification and usually a download of every new episode as I release it. Plus, it will unlock all the previous episodes where you can listen into so many amazing stories from other entrepreneurs and successful investors in things like crypto, stocks, property, and so on. And of course, if you are an Apple user, I would really appreciate if you hit the review button to leave your review within iTunes for this podcast. That would really help me to rank higher in the rankings within Apple and thus reach more people. And of course, that leads to more great guests, more interviews for you. Okay, gonna wrap it up. My name is Yaro. Thanks for listening to today's episode, and I'll speak to you on the next one. Bye-bye.